Good morning, my darlings, and welcome to day 28 of the 31 Days of Horror. And today I bring you an absolute classic from the pen of Alan Aspinall. This one is on Kindle. It has 111 pages and 8 chapters. It was written in 2022, so it's not that old. But it is sure to become a classic, especially for Halloween. For I bring to you the darling novel on my phone at the moment, but it is part of the Kindle collection that he has done in the past. And this one is called Ghost Stories. There we are. The nice picture of the underground. The Fading Light, Book 4. Yes, but not to be missed. It is a Halloween classic. It will become a staple in years to come, no doubt. I hope it does. I loved it so. There are 8 wonderful chapters, not very long, 111 pages. You'll have it read in a couple of hours, but oh, what a glorious couple of hours of true fun. Yes, my darlings. Let me introduce you to some of the characters, for there are many. We have lots of lovely little vignettes throughout this beautiful Kindle book. And the first one I will talk to you about, her name is Melanie. She's having the day from hell. She thought she was going to go from the date from heaven, but unfortunately that wasn't to be. No, our darling girl ends up going to an office party, stays later than she should, decides to go home when it's starting to rain, feels a little nervous walking up to the tower block that she lives in. And then, oh, the hell really starts. This poor girl, all she wants to do is get up to floor 10 where she lives. All she wants to do is get inside the lift. But things start going very wrong in the lobby. The temperature suddenly drops. Oh dear, that's not a good sign. And then the poor darling, she gets inside the lift, and then the lift starts to misbehave. The lift decides it wants to go where the lift wants to go. And it doesn't get her all the way to the 10th floor before breaking down on floor 6. And then the poor darling is plunged into darkness, but the banging and the ghostly sounds were absolutely awful, and the girl starts to get hysterical. Poor Melanie. The lift decides to shoot all the way up to the 18th floor. And when it gets to the top of the 18th floor, there is an unearthly scream. She's in blackness. She's screaming hysterically. And then she's covered in blood. Ooh, blood oozes through the ceiling of the lift that she's trapped inside. By the time the fire brigade rescue her, the poor girl is beyond control of shaking and screaming and crying, and she is taken care of by psychiatric drugs. Poor darling, she was so terrified she needed psychiatric care to take care of her and her adult mind. Then we meet Danny, the council worker for the Lambeth Council, who opens up his email box. Oh dear. Finds several unclassified, strange emails that are all related to old buildings in the Lambeth Council. And yet this is a very special inbox, for it deals with something that you wouldn't think would be there and necessary, but clearly it is. It's hauntings. Lots and lots of hauntings. Oh Goodness me. So many that they have an unclassified department that deals with it, and he's the one that deals with it. I suppose we could coin the phrase, who are you going to call? Well, clearly Danny, because Danny seems to have the wherewithal and knack to know about haunted buildings. And things that do go bump in the night. Danny, that's not a job I'd want, but well done, lad. You're obviously able to deal with it, more so than I ever could. Oh my goodness me. Not for the faint-hearted, that job. I wonder if he gets danger pay. Do jobs like this really exist? Inquiring minds want to know. Then we move on to Henry. The cemetery, the graveyard shift. What can I say for you, darling Henry, and your beautiful wife Margaret? You live on the premises of the cemetery in a little cottage. But both you and Margaret know that something's not quite right with the cemetery these days. Ever since they found the body of the policeman that was murdered in the first book of Lucy, yes, The Fading Light, the missing policeman's body was found severely mutilated on the gravestone of Grace Yarland, one of his victims that committed suicide. It will become clear, will it? Scary. Oh yes, very much so. All I can say for you, darling Henry and Margaret, is support your local cemetery. People are just dying to get in. I had to do that one, Alan, I'm sorry. I write all my own jokes. That's why they're so bad. Anyway, Henry knows that something's amiss, and he doesn't like staying in the cemetery now when it gets a bit late at night and it gets a bit darker. And Margaret, well, she lights the house, the little cottage, should I say, up so Henry can find his way home. And to add a bit of cheer and warmth to a very cold December evening, the Christmas lights are lighting up, and she's trying to make the place a little bit more festive, even though they're both quite terrified. For the thing that crawls out of the cemetery at night looking for food to feed its ravenous soul. Yes, the shadow crawler. The shadow crawler is the remnant of a soul that was quite damaged. And although it started to eat the local wildlife, its tastes have become slightly more needy, slightly more wanty of human flesh. And Kimberly, the drug addict, she's also an abuse victim, which is why she's turned to drugs. She needs money for drugs, otherwise she wouldn't have been out walking the streets, borderline prostitution, looking for her next fix. Oh, Kimberly, had the need for the drugs not been so strong, perhaps she would have stayed in the squat that night. Unfortunately, the shadow crawler has plans for you. As poor Jeff Starkey and Buster his dog can only see too well as they watch you being dragged down the street by the shadow crawler. Now, the shadow crawler wasn't always a sinister, evil creature that we see before us, but having made a deal with Lucy, unfortunately, not reading the finer print, the little soul was corrupted, for the shadow crawler was the victim of the policeman that was found mutilated and laid across the headstone. That's all I'm going to tell you about that one, my darlings, but it's a very good read. Our last entry into the ghost stories is Simon Rice. An underground sewer worker finds out ghosts are real and very deadly. Wentworth Road is quite the graveyard, and the rats are the least of his problems. Oh, Simon, maybe it's time for a career change, my darling. Perhaps being an underground sewer worker isn't all it's cracked up to be. Yes, I quite like this one with Simon. It's reminiscent of a James Herbert book called The Dark. And if you know, you know about the sewer workers that go down into the dark in the dark book and never come back. So if you've read that book, and I'm pretty sure many of you have read James Herbert's Dark, well, Simon Rice, this section of Ghost Stories by Alan Aspinall, is a nod to the dark. It's brilliant. I loved it. I absolutely adored that. In fact, I'd say that might be one of my favourites. Or is it the mum and dad and little girl that move into their new house? Yes, Harry and Mary are the mum and dad, and Susie is a little girl, and they move into a new property only to find that it's haunted. And Mary, the mother, was wondering because the neighbours kept coming out of the houses and looking at them as they were moving in on moving day. And they'd only been in the house 2 or 3 nights before the hauntings happened. And Mary was absolutely raged because she knew that the neighbours knew. She thought back to why they were all staring, and she comes to the conclusion that the neighbours knew. And she's raged about it because they could have warned them and they chose not to. And I just feel so desperately sorry for Mary, Harry and Susie because they thought they were getting a fresh new start. They were getting a brand new home. They thought it was a good place. It turns out it's the most evil place that ever lived. Talk about haunted houses. So it's a toss-up between the haunted house and the haunted sewer, because they're both equally juicy and incredibly scary. If you're wanting a very good, short read, but a very good read of an atmospheric ghost stories, this is an incredibly good book. And I do hope will become a Halloween classic. I really, really do. The last section that I love involves newspaper clippings, and there's one that I really liked about the Tower of London. Now, who doesn't love to go to London and do the touristy things? Well, my favourite out of all of them happens to be the Tower of London, and that's because of its absolute grisly past. Obviously, you know that Henry the Eighth and his 6 wives, well, Anne Boleyn and Catherine Howard, both related to each other as well through the Howardian family, or in the Boleyns and the Howards. Yes. Well, those two girls had their heads, they were beheaded. So they are there. And obviously, you know the story of the 2 princes that were locked in the tower, and all the other gory tales that if you find a really wonderful beef eater, I'm sure they will tell you the scary tales. And it's well worth a visit for Halloween, dare I say. But what I loved about this final entry into the ghost stories was it was called The Bloody Tower. That's because the walls were bleeding. They were starting to bleed, and they had to put scaffolding up to hide the blood that was pouring out from the stonework. And you'd think it was a special effect just to get extra tourists going through. Not that you need extra tourists, because that's probably one of the busiest tourist attractions in London. And, well, they send the blood, or whatever it is that's seeping out of the walls, off to be analysed. And indeed, it comes back as it's human blood. But the worrying thing is that they're all from different people, different victims. Of course, they must be from all the victims, because it's very old, it's the Tower of London, and all the people that have been tortured there and murdered there. Oh yes, quite a formidable place. Even our Queen Elizabeth I was locked up in the tower. Quite the tales. But I love how Alan finishes with that one. Yes, the scary, creepy, bleeding walls of the Tower of London, the bloody tower. Although there are lots of newspaper clippings, that one was quite my favourite. Oh yes, yes, I loved it. Alan has a knack for getting under the skin and doing very, very creepy tales. And book 4, the ghost stories, are quite the juicy, haunted tale that you really need for Halloween. And that's why I've done it on day 28, to give you time to go to Kindle to find it and to download it. Because, as I say, it's just a couple of hours of, a haunted tales. But, oh, they're so good. And they certainly linger in the mind for a long, long time to come. Now we have something to look forward to with the ghost stories, because we have a book 5 coming up, and I'll tell you what that is, because I need to get to the end of this darling novel. And it's not really that long. I should have got this set up for you, but I didn't think I was going to cover it. There we are, almost there, my darlings. But yeah, the whole collection is incredibly, incredibly scary, and I think you should really download it. Here we are, we're almost there. Coming soon. Coming soon. The Sleeping Army, Fading Light, book 5. Well, can't wait to read that one, Alan. I really can't. The Fading Light, book 5, The Sleeping Army, will be Alan's next book, and I do so hope you will download Ghost Stories. I really do. Halloween is upon us, my loves. It is. Download this one and have some ghoulish fun for a couple of hours. And if you like what I've done, give me a thumbs up. If you really like what I've done, you can always give us a follow and find out what the last 3 nights before Halloween arrives I've got in store for you. Another ghoulishly horrid tale. Something to scare you. Yes, definitely. I love a ghoulishly horrible, gory tale. Yes. Enjoy your ghost stories and come back tomorrow for more ghoulish delights. Take care, my darlings. Bye-bye.